much focus as you can master. And the subject matter is really interesting. It's the cosmology of the world according to the Abhidharma. It's levels of health and the idea of sustenance, what keeps us going. So I'm going to share with you a fantastical and magnificent view, a different view of what existence might be from a different set of eyes and experience. Yeah? So for that, let's get us in a nice, comfortable seated position. Before we go there, let's make an offering of a mandala and conceive of your universe as best as you can, and then adorn it with the most magnificent things. I'll cover the mandala in the middle of the thing. But see if you can conceive of the universe, how you understand it, and then cover it with the most exquisite experiences and beings, and offer that to whatever that is that shows you wisdom.
Sashi
Huki Jishin Metokram Viram Shin Yindem Hari Sangre Shindu Mitevargi Drokun Namda Shimla Jupasho Idam Guru Mandalatam Niyatayami
Sangye
Chudam Sohi Chognam Nam Janchu Vardu Dakni Gyapsushi Daki Chinyengi Petsonangi Drola Venchir Sangye Druparsho
Sangye
Chudam Soki Choknam Nam Janchu Vardu Dakni Japsushi Daki Shinyengi Pezanangi Drola Venchir Sangye Druparsho
Sangye
Shriram Zoki Choknam Nam Janchu Vardu Dakni Gyapsuchi Daki Chinyengi Pezonangi Drola Venchir Sangye Druparsho. So take a comfortably seated spot. We'll do a short motivational meditation. Scan your body and relax any tension you feel starting from the bottom up, making sure you release any muscles in your face. The part of the posture that's important is that your spine is straight and that you can gradually withdraw from the posture altogether. Leave your body in a place that you could return to it later. And begin to press your mind against your breath. Wherever you catch the sensation of the breath, only return your mind to the breath as it enters and exits the body you're leaving still. If your mind is trying to call your attention to anything else, don't get caught up in the resistance to it or in the grasping to it. Just gently, naturally return to the breath whenever you can. There's nothing else to do, everything else will wait for you for later. Now invite all around you the highest virtue you can imagine, the most sublime experience of wisdom in every particle surrounding you, every thought, every physical thing, as it's experienced in your mind, and just feel submerged in it. If your mind is creating images of it, just observe the images as what you are actually experiencing them, which is just ideas. And then sensations attached to those ideas. Recognize it's your mind. And then consider the emptiness of your mind, meaning the infinite potential that the bliss you could be experiencing could again be the most heightened, even greater than what you just perceived. That there is the capacity in you to experience a reality beyond the limits of what you conceive right now. And that it could be completely pleasurable, beyond imagination. And then create the causes for that to stay and expand by asking that to stay. And always contact you and reach you. And then imagine that occurring and you perceiving this world with this kind of ease and knowing, nirvana, freedom from any affliction, and then beyond. See if you can see that as a real possibility for your mind. Call it. And with that awareness in your heart, slowly come back to the room, but keep the awareness if you can. Thank you for that. That was nice and quiet. Yeah, quick one. So we've been covering the Abhidharma Kosha, which is this extensive presentation of everything from karma to the tiniest particle to the most expansive universe, and then the birth and death of universes, number of creatures, beings, etc. And we've really been skimming it. So we've just been looking at the headlines of a chapter and then looking at the headlines and getting a tiny explanation of that. And then we'll be looking at a commentary, Illumination on the Path to Freedom by the first Dalai Lama about it, to try and get some insight into what do all these coded words mean. from the Abhidharma Kosha. So quick review, how many realms of existence?
6.
Ha!
5.
What's up there?
3.
Yeah. What are the 3? I mean, there are 6, there are 3. There's like the same lists appearing in all sorts of forms.
Desire, form, formless.
Desire, form, formless, right? So, however you grasp onto that, imagine that. It's not hard to imagine that reality is not only our experience of it. That looked at the existence of existence from a different set of consciousnesses, this experience could be immensely different. Yeah? And we use the analogy of an animal and a human trying to observe the same thing, and this, like, you couldn't communicate concepts like we communicate each other to an animal and get a verification of understanding of it. So if that's possible, the logical argument here is that it's also possible in many more myriads of ways and time, up and down. Yeah, but even greater experiences of existence and even lesser experiences of existence that we recognize. With that premise, within that you can then slice that into 3 realms: the desire, the form, and the formless. And then within the desire realm, how many realms or ways of dividing that?
3.
6. He was so funny at the beginning of class. So that is typically depicted in the Wheel of Life or the Bhava Chakra as the 5-6. There's a dotted line in the top right hand quadrant there. There's a dotted line between devas and asuras, right? So about gods and demigods, or pleasure beings or semi-pleasure beings, or whatever you call them. So what are they? First of all, we've got what I just said, the devas and asuras.
Gods.
Yeah, gods and near gods, if you like. The next one?
Animals.
Humans. Yeah, down the chain of experience. And then next? Animals. Yeah, and then craving spirits or pretas or hell beings. Hungry ghosts. And all these are just like we described, human animal perception of existence. The Abhidharma Kosha describes all these myriads of other perception of existence. Yeah? And we've covered all of them, and what gets you to those realms and how do you experience those realms in this course, except hell beings and hell realms. Yeah? I'll cover that tonight. At least the division of the divisions and of the divisions, right? So you guys did good. I can't remember what the next slide was. Oh, we covered barter. Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah. So top of mind, barter. What's it mean to you? What do you remember?
The sign between death and rebirth. The space
Great.
between death.
Good. The space between. Yeah. And so and then there were scriptural proofs and logical proofs. Do you remember any of that?
The logical one was like, it can't just disappear, like there needs to be a continuation.
Right, the proof of a continuum, that you can't have a seed over here and then the tree pops up over there, that there is a continuum of things that occur in the physical and then the non-physical world.
And the spiritual is because the Buddha taught it, isn't it?
Yeah, he taught it in various ways. He taught it in various ways. Okay,
Various ways.
you can look it up. So that's good. So there's an in-between realm. Do you remember any of the mathematics? But Master Vasubandhu.
7 times 7.
Great, 7 times 7 is what I remember when I think about the barter realm.
7 days, but it can repeat 7 times.
Yeah, up to 7 times. And then for the majority, for the great majority of beings, so the Sakya Trisan, the head of Sakya clan, he says that, you could say the great majority of beings will have a rebirth sometime within that, the first 7 or second 7 or third number of 7 days according to our timeline. Up to 49, and then for sure you'll have a birth. Yeah? So if you have a projecting karma that demands you be born as a squirrel and it's not squirrel mating time, you might end up being a similar creature with a fluffy tail, but it's their mating time, like a fox or something. So that's an example. Cool. Let's see what we're covering now. Sustenance. Let's have a look. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about Master Vasubandhu. You reminded me of something last week, Nick, that Geshe Michael said at the Wheel of Life teachings about why Master Vasubandhu, or one of the views about Master Vasubandhu writing the Abhidharma Kosha. Do you remember?
Mm-hmm.
What was it?
Master Vasubandhu was arguing on behalf of the lower school.
Yeah, the Abhidharmas.
Yeah, Abhidharmas, and Master, I always forget his brother. Master Asanga, his brother. But they were having this debate, and then Master Vasubandhu lost the debate. So, because he didn't believe in the Mahayana way, and is it correct, Subar? Yeah. So as a result of that, he said to kind of account for your disbelief and for your loss of the argument, you have to write about everything you formerly believed and put it into a book. And
right. So that's a lovely thing. So one argument says that Master Vasubandhu wrote this to purge himself, if you like, of having believed these things the way they were believed as. Without the idea of karma and emptiness, like a prasangika would understand. Right? That's one argument, and I like that one. Yeah. So then the other one is like the people really did have these experiences, and they really are proponing that from a point of view, this is seen as a true, real perspective. Yeah. So what's interesting about Master Vasubandhu, and I've only really had a tiny insight into the Abhidharma Kosha, as tiny as one could have, having studied with Geshe Michael and then diving in a little bit further and getting limited translations, because I only ever see it in English. I don't see all the Tibetan, So that has some limitations. You do get some sense that Master Vasubandhu is talking in some places about a deep experience that he's having so he's commenting on things coming from the sutras, yeah? But he's commenting or he's writing about it as if he's got like a personal experience about it, like when he talks about the 37 levels of meditative concentration or something, and then the subtle shifts between that. He talks as if from personal experience, and then he describes milliseconds between flopping into an almost enlightened being and then into an enlightened being, the last few milliseconds, and what occurs in slow motion, if you like, within that tiny space of perceptual time. Then he describes time and space and blah, blah, blah. So you have this insight that this being has an insight beyond the normal. And Geshe Michael often says it's difficult to translate because half the time you're translating about subtleties that you didn't even know that whole part of dividing an experience existed, let alone slicing it into 37 distinct subtleties of that, like the 84,000 mental afflictions, for example. So here is a slice of 4 kinds of sustenance, and it says that there's a line in the Abhidharma that says living beings stay here because of sustenance. This is what they have to stay alive. And that's got like a double meaning. It means also that it keeps us in suffering, right? These kinds of sustenance. So I'll just cover quickly what they are. The first one is portion sustenance. And they say portion because you engulf it or you take in sustenance as a being in portions. And we know that as food, that we got a gulp of drink and a bite of food and we process it in portions, so portion sustenance. There's gross, and that's the gross part, and then there's the subtle sustenance. And for those of you who were paying attention in the last few classes, what would you consider as subtle gulps or portions of sustenance that we described?
Wait.
Huh?
Sun?
No. I'm fishing a little bit because I think I only did a quick mention.
In the class on the Bardo room?
Go on. That's close. No, it's correct. Sorry, it's correct. It's not close. Do you remember what the Bardo beings are called besides Bardoas? Huh?
Smell eaters?
Right. So they engulf some of the subtle. Excellent. Is the portions of smell that a bardo being would consume.
That's a literal translation.
That's just what they describe as one of the subtle subtypes of a kamgise. Yeah, so it's subtle because it hasn't got physical substance.
So the food is subtle.
Hmm?
So the food is
So the gross part is what creates poo and wee,
right.
and the subtle doesn't
So
create poo and wee.
subtle beings eat subtle food or subtle sustenance.
Yes and no. In the whole experience, in the whole description of how worlds come to be and what a great eon is, and I don't know if you remember that class. In the beginning of a great eon, beings on the planet are angelic. They live up to 10,000 years. They consume. They sort of touch the earth and they get sustenance.
They wouldn't be eating the food that we eat.
That's right. They don't eat food that make them poo and wee. Yeah, that's a distinction. So I'm just going to dump a whole bunch of information in your head, yeah, today. So then the next type of sustenance is a combination of object, sense power, and consciousness, yeah, and that involves receiving some pleasure, and they call that staying contact. So Rekpa, do you remember Rekpa from anywhere? It's one of the links in the 12 links of dependent origination, the couple making what appears to be making love. It's called contact. Yeah. And so the contact between an object, a sense power perceiving that object, and the consciousness connected there is a kind of sustenance. And so involving pleasure, let me just make sure. It's the kind of sustenance, the way they describe it is, nobody dies of starvation 10 feet away from a hamburger, yeah, or from that close from water if they're dying of thirst. It's the kind of sustenance that keeps you going in that last dash. If you didn't have the experience that there is something there, if you didn't have contact with your sense powers, an object, and your consciousness being aware that that's possible food, you could die. But this, even if your body is about to pass out, the fact that you have that contact, Rekpa, gives you sustenance to go and reach that last moment and engulf it. Yeah, that's a kind of sustenance. And I like that as an idea of sustenance. Then you have staying movement of the mind. And this is, is that what I just said?
It's almost like, like hope.
The hope is this next part. So the first one, the staying contact, is the actual contact. That's a hope. That's a sustenance. The hope part is the staying movement of the mind. It's the consciousness part of that last thing I just described. It's just the mental component of that only. Yeah. So maybe the idea that there's food around the corner, but you haven't had contact. Does that make sense?
Why do they put this under sustenance?
Because it gives you life. It provides the conditions for keeping this life going, in whatever form you are.
All right.
Yeah? The movement of the mind, and then the last sustenance, they call it staying consciousness, is the consciousness linked with contact. Did I just double up or make a mistake?
No.
Consciousness linked with a contact involving pleasure. How is that different to hope?
It's from staying contact.
Huh?
That sounds like staying contact.
Yeah, I had,
'Cause
in
your
my original
object-
notes, hope was part of the second one, the staying contact.
Yeah, sorry, let me just go. Staying contact, which is the hope, the staying movement of the mind. Number 3, is the actual basis, the basis for any action or thought. So the idea that you have a movement of the mind gives you a basis for saying something or doing something which propels you forward, giving you life sustenance. And then the last one is
The mind itself.
mind itself, not
This goes back into like the 6, what do you call them? Class 5, course 5, like the 6, like, where you're born, you have a mind, then you have the identity with me, mine, and then you have something like an object, and
An
either
object.
like or dislike. And then that repeats the cycle. I'm sorry, I don't know if that has anything to do, but
Yeah.
it sounds like it does because you're
I
breaking
think
it.
it's
You're
just a
breaking
way
it.
of dividing it. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's a way of dividing it. So what they're saying is that these things, the pushing forward from thought to action, sustains you, keeps you going. The idea that that there might be something around the corner, the hope part, sustains you, keeps you going, keeps you living. The fact that you've connected to it and you had contact and confirmation, and there's a pleasure in your mind, keeps you going, and in a more gross level, eating it or consuming material things sustains you, keeps you going.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna, maybe you just said this, but like the last one, it's just the actual experience, so your mind doesn't have to be there and it doesn't have to be having movement towards the thing or even contact.
Exactly,
with it.
it's
kinda
just
like a memory,
mind.
like a
Yeah.
memory of it.
They say it's the mind itself. There would be no consciousness and therefore no being. So there's no sense of being if you did not have consciousness itself. So the raw consciousness, the perception of consciousness, is in some sense a
Oh, I
sustenance
see.
for a being, for being not have a mind. Being. So that's, I think, what I've got to say about that. The function is that it perpetuates your life, and the sutra says that these 4 are actually the root of everything that destroys us anyway. Right? So although it's sustenance and it keeps form going, keeps life going, keeps consciousness going, it's locked in this cyclical way of it grows, it dissipates, it dies, it grows, it dissipates, it keeps us locked in samsara. Yeah, sustenance. The next thing I want to quickly talk about, it's not in any homework or anything, is they also had a division of things that nourish your body. Yeah, and I thought this was interesting because often I battle between relaxing, taking care of this thing, yeah, so I could have a practice, and not taking care of this, like just being all in my head and so on. So I thought I'd share this with you because I think they're actually good to hear, things which nourish the body. And the first thing is food. So the food that I just talked about, the hard food, that kind of thing. Doing good, they said, it's called taking care of your body. Doing good, the translation is from lecture, but it means taking time out to massage your body, to bathe your body, to keep it clean and to actually keep it healthy. Yeah, to keep this physicality healthy, so it's a vehicle for practice. And they said it's an important part, or it's a kind of sustenance, a kind of way to nourish your body. So you get nourishment not just from the nutrients and the rest of the food, you get a sense of nourishment and continuing an elevation of life if you take care of this thing. You wash it, you bathe it, you relax it. Yeah, the next one is sleep. Right, and they say not too much, and they say not too little.
They're wrong.
Yeah, they're wrong. It's too much. Not till 11 o'clock, and then not. No. So you actually have to keep this mechanical thing. You take care of it for it to operate at its optimum. And sleep is one of these things. And the next one, which I thought was amazing, was Ting and Zing. Do you remember the word Ting and Zing?
Yeah.
What's it mean? Because it's one of the ways they describe meditation or concentration. Remember there's Gom, Sempa, blah, blah, blah. And Ting and Zin is one of them. What is it? I gave you a hint in the description.
Single pointed concentration.
Exactly right. Single pointed concentration. Very good. Ting and Zin. It is the description of meditation or concentration that describes maintaining your mind on a single object. Doesn't mean, and this took me years, and I hope for those of you trying to practice meditation and seeing whether you reach Tingzing or getting close or whatever, it doesn't mean you find a single point at the top of the candle and that you're visualizing or something. That's not right. Even though I knew that wasn't right, that's still what my mind did over and over and over. Or it tried to find the point of the nose of the Buddha I'm imagining. I'm like, stop it. You know, the very first time that I got the idea of single pointed concentration, Tingzing, is you pick something that you're meditating on and you just stay on it. You just stay on it. And it can be a broad subject or a narrow subject. Eventually you can get more and more narrow, more precise to play with the malleableness of your mind. Yeah? But for me, initially, the first time I felt I actually got a glimpse of this in my mind was meditating on anger. And it was like broad. When do I get angry? And of course I had lots of things to focus on. But because all of them were focused on when do I get angry, they were all single pointed on my object. My object was, when do I get angry? If I had thought of lunch because I was hungry and all my past, then it was out of that. But if I was thinking specifically about moments of what rose anger in me, so long as I kept on that, Tingzing, yeah? And then you get more narrow, more narrow, more narrow, more narrow, until you can get single pointed about the reality that you are projecting your reality. If you can do that, I mean, that's one of the reasons for this. Yeah, observe your mind, create your every experience. And if you can do it in meditation, then you can do it out in the world, then that tool is just a tool, a microscope. So I found interesting that one of the nourishments of your body, yeah, is concentration, the capacity to stay on something, to not go, That was very, very interesting. What else do I have to tell you about that? rushing, but I got so much to share. Sleep, concentration. Again, it is nourishing and it is good, but it's perishable, this thing that we're maintaining. It has a shelf life and it will have to be thrown out of the fridge of your existence. Yeah. So this thing we're maintaining, yes, keep it good and healthy, keep the shelf life as long as possible, so you can use it for something. It has a shelf life, yeah, and it finishes. Any questions? Good. Next. Okay. Cosmology. Right? This is a accelerated model from the Western perspective of how our galaxy was created. And I don't know how many million or billion years. It describes how the elemental forces came together after some kind of bang.
Looks like an iTunes visualization.
Mm-hmm.
So cool.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's sped up, right? The reason I'm showing it to you is because I'm about to share very, very briefly. We talked about all these beings, right, in this course, but where do they reside? And when we're offering the mandala, this is what we should be imagining, right? The version described by Master Vasubandhu of that. And it begins with a disk. Actually, it doesn't. It begins with elemental space, the emptiness of space. Not emptiness as we know emptiness from the philosophical perspective, but empty space. Then these lungs, these winds, begin slowly to merge together. And then they come together, and just like you saw, they come and come together and come together and come together. So, and they build up speed and momentum so fast that the speed of their spinning begins to get as hard as a diamond, they say. A diamond, when you do the 37-part mandala, I don't know if you've ever seen people do that. They do Om Vajrabhumi Ahom, and they're creating the diamond ground and this and that. They're creating these discs in their mind, similar to what you just saw from a Western point of view. But it begins with lung, empty space, lung meaning wind, getting more and more centrifugal, so tight that you can't go through it, becomes solid, so tight, it becomes as tight as a diamond. And then there's a gold ground and a water ground, and elemental forces begin to create all these things. Now, this is the cosmology as presented in the Abhidhamma Kosha, but in Yojanas. And a yojana has so many doms, and so many doms have so many truths, and so many truths have so many source, and there's all these sub-measurements all the way down to, this is where they do the measurements of subatomic particles, and all the way up to massive, massive existence. Lung speeds up, blah, blah, blah.
What is that exactly?
What is what?
What is that?
That is the version of what you saw on a model. This is what a mandala actually looks like. This is the basis of the universe we exist in from the Abhidharma point of view, because two great presentations
So
of
it's not the universe. That's the basis for the universe.
it's you'll follow it in a second. Yeah.
Okay.
This is the basis for the universe. It's the ground on which the universe exists, and we're in one tiny corner of this thing. Yeah, and it begins with those elemental forces turning so much that they form this solid disk of wind, becomes gold. Then there's a disk of water above that, and on that water, which is 5.4 million miles wide, and so many things fitting these measurements called yojanas, exist this continents. I'll explain it in a second. So someone on the internet I found correlated that to our galaxy, and they'd say that Earth and the system that we exist in, which you'll see from the diagram I'm about to show you somewhere here, that the other continents are here, and the other continents are there, and the other continents are there. And in the center, the great mass of the center of our galaxy, they call what the Abhidharmakosha calls Mount Meru, the central mountain of all skies. Yeah? And Mount Meru has four sides, and this is where the Devas and Asuras live, and the four sides have different colors. One side has got lapis lazuli, which is a deep blue, and that's on the eastern side. And any beings that exist on the eastern side of Mount Meru perceive the sky as blue because Mount Meru has lapis lazuli. And then, so this fantastical description of the universe. You following so far?
Sorry,
Yeah.
are we looking at the entirety of space, or are we looking at the universe, or are we looking at the galaxy? What is it?
That's the Milky Way.
This is our galaxy, right?
No,
That's
it's
the
not.
Milky Way there.
So
From
this is
this
one-
diagram, I'm not describing this. I'm just showing you what
That's-
someone correlated.
But that's just a galaxy, but the description that we were looking at is the entirety of space with all the universes.
With all the universes. But in next class, we talk about how they start and end. It's not like a fixed thing where
Oh.
everything abides. Right? It'll go through a certain period of time. There's this catastrophic moment, and then it begins again. And like it's not just one big bang. It's like a million
Many
big bangs
big
if you're trying to
Yeah,
correlate.
I understand.
Yeah.
I just wanted
We
The
took
left-
that picture.
Huh? I took that picture
Oh.
on my iPhone. So what you're seeing there, those discs are the big. If you've ever seen anybody offer a mandala to a Buddha, and when we sit there and do that, we're doing those four continents, and Mount Meru is the center. Yeah, and this is representing that. And as you go, you grab a piece of rice or with stones and gold or whatever, and you do Om Vajrabhumi Ahong, and you're creating the sand, the wind disc, and then the gold disc as you're cleaning, and then you're creating this side of the universe, that side of the universe, that side of the universe, that side of the universe, Mount Meru, etc., etc., etc. I'll walk through it with you in a creative way. If you're looking at those discs from the top, on the water disc, there is Mount Meru in the center with this sort of weird structure at the top. It's very fantastical. And this is what I said, depending on which side you're looking at, Zambuling is that continent, and it's sort of shaped like a triangle. That continent is shaped circular, that's rectangular, that's like a bow. And then they have exactly in replica that this one's supposed to be that shape and that shape and that shape and that shape on either side, which is subcontinents. The planetary system we exist in, according to Master Vasubandhu, the Abhidharmakosha, is in this place called Zambulik. On that side of the galaxy, universe, space, in that side we exist. Looking at Mount Meru from this side and having the experience of looking at blue. If you're on this side, you would see it as red, I think. I can't remember. On the other side, you see it as green and yellow. I thought instead of giving you all the details, I'm going to share with you a poem that I wrote for Geshe Michael Roach when he first taught me this, and then you'll get the idea of the measurements in the space. There are 7 mountain ranges between us and Mount Meru. There's a great ocean, a spans of ocean between here and there, like infinity between here and there. They're as thick as what I showed you before. So I figured instead of giving you all this data, which I'm not really proficient in other than imagining it as one form of looking at our universe. Like I'm trying to imagine Master Vasubandhu, the Buddha, and all beings in between having a sense of a spiraling universe from meditation. No telescopes, no scientific models, no mathematical equations. Entering into some deep sense of meditation and experiencing the complete vastness of all time and space, surging and twirling and coming into existence and creating worlds and the rest. Yeah? Based on this, on the Abhidharma system, there is another system that describes cosmology, and that's the Kala Chakra Tantra system. Yeah? That shows it slightly different. Based on this is where they make those offerings of the mandala, and that's why we imagine this, that big, perfected, and then we adorn it. We cover it with things that are metaphorical of states of mind. So we cover it with a great minister that has the power, flies on a disc that can fix everything, and we cover it with a beautiful dancing Dakini lady, which brings every being into a sense of meditative concentration, and we cover it with a tree in a place called Zambuling. There's this tree that exists with wish-fulfilling jewels, and it drops over the ocean, and this fruit is this wish-fulfilling jewel that drops into the water, and it goes Zambul, Zambul, and which is the same as Kerplop. You know, for us, Kerplop in Tibetan, Zambul is that sound that we make. So I figured instead of doing that, because I'm not that versed at the Abhidharma system of cosmology, nor does it interest me that much. It does interest me that a being could have a perception of the universe in this detail from that way back without telescopes and the rest, right? So then I figured I'd share that with you. You're cool with that? Yeah? Good. Here we go. It's not on the exam. Yeah? It's about 7 minutes long.
Could we snap our fingers when we're done?
Yeah. So you're imagining what I described so far, right? The creation of the universe from emptiness to this disc and so on. And then I'm overlaying over that the actual offering of a mandala, where you grab rice and you place Mount Meru, the continent, on either side, and then another ring and another ring and another ring of the 7 mountain ranges, and then you cover it with ministers and elephants and Zambuling trees, etc. So just enjoy. Here we go. It began as if I floated in an emptiness too vast, like one particle in a vacuumous infinity of black. My whole being was resonating with vibrations from a far-off swirling cloud that encompassed all this black. And the cloud had gained momentum, and as it spun in all its flare, moving in concentric circles of fantastic thick blue air. As it grabbed and pulled me closer with each turn of its great arm towards its compact humming beacon in the center of its eye, I had traveled 5 to the power of 60 times 4.5 miles maybe. It was something of such lightness, but in yojanas, you see. So that was the literal calculation. I was now submerged in something like primeval white clear waters as I moved my body upwards, wishing I had brought some floaters. After 3.6 million miles of this underwater risk, I broke ground, here we go, you're seeing the edge of this, into the floor of a solid golden disc, and then working my way upward through this solid golden disc of 11 million miles of sublime eternity, I was just about to surface, though underwater it did seem, and once more I was emerging 360,000 million miles deep. And with each breath, with a breath that stretched my chest, I surfaced, splashing up towards this light like a single ship survivor dwarfed by a glorious sight, that I knew was called Mount Meru, central mountain of all skies. So now we're looking at this view. Now I hung above it all and paused, pointing down towards. I did leap over 7 mountain ranges and into 7 blissful seas. And I made my way to the eastern continent of white, populated by double beings, twice as tall and twice as mighty as a normal human being. This actually gives you details from the Abhidharma. As I was taken up in a hand too large to fathom and too fast to have been seen, and I dropped into Kerplot land, the continent where humans live. Upon landing there, I could hear, through the blue of its horizons, countless human generations teaching Dharma through all nations. And once more I now was spinning like gold dust in a giant's palm, carried swiftly from Kerplot to a circle-shaped land. And on landing there I was dwarfed, this is a description, both in number and in size, by too many people and their cattle covering this gold-circled land. And from there I was now flying, or somehow had seemed to fly, to a square yellow continent up on the far northern side. And on that yellow continent I landed, my mortality intact, there encountering ancient beings who were just about to die, Devas and Asuras. On the verge of 500 years, each one would have heard announced that they had but 7 mortal days before returning to the ground. They each spoke of too many years of the nectars of a life, far too long to recognize that the very act of living was but suffering disguised. Too long to keep the Dharma or alertness in their mind, not knowing that on emptiness was where their salvation lied. And with my eyes newly opened, both externally and inside, I flew over each new continent and touched down on either side on their replicas in miniature, systematically left and right, left and right, left and right. How could I have known of such things that transformed my very being, things I could not have conceived were it not for Geshe-la, who had offered them to me? And so my heart was transformed, and my yearnings went with it, and I wanted also passionately to give thanks for all these great things. Hence I thought of offering something for these truly wondrous sights, and I thought of a great mountain rising high into the sky, like the size of all of Asia, and perhaps 4 times as high. And on wishing it appeared, this mountain of crystal brittle, covering all the eastern continent, but somehow it seemed too little. So you're supposed to do an offering of diamonds on this continent, right? So what else could I have wished for an offering for your teachings? And I realized that wishes would be such a clever thing, that upon this thought appeared a most wondrous a tree, made of silver trunk and golden roots and a many precious thing. That's how they describe the tree of Zambulu. Yeah, Zambu. It had covered all the human land in its vastness and its splendor, that it in its shadow surrendered the ignorance of a world, and I knew that every wish could be granted from this land, and somehow I wanted more for you, perhaps on a circular land. Upon this thought it appeared a huge cow of pinkish gold, with its diamond horns and sapphire hoofs, far too beautiful for words. More of the wish-fulfilling tree bits that I talked about before was now growing from its tail end, making wishes tree for all. So you're supposed to throw this cow made of these fantastical things on the circle continent that gives out wishes from its tail. And from all this wishing frenzy offering I offered thee, I realized the square continent was as bare as can be, with too many tortured beings. So I saw that land abundant in spontaneous growing crops, so the 500-year-olds people would have to suffer no more. And they feasted on their abundance, and I hope they stay that way at least till the 37th part, where this offering should end. Then I looked up at the heavens as if to catch a glimpse of you, and I saw the sky was bare, not appropriate, too blue. So I covered all the eastern skies with this brilliant golden disc. It was awesome in its size and its capabilities. I could catch it as it traveled, too fast for the eye to see, and I knew it held the meaning of awareness to keep. So you're offering on the eastern side this golden disc that flies at the speed of light, and it signifies your capacity for awareness in meditation. And then all the other offerings and do the same. They begin to do something like that. And the southern skies were also bare, and there I wished for thee a most precious holy object, a blue jewel as big can be. In the distance it would heal all the folk who crossed its splendor, and I knew that this jewel was joy of compassionate surrender. So you're supposed to do that pile there of these jewels, these blue jewels. And on the western skies, which is up there, I peered with intentions to adorn it as a prayer of my offerings, or perhaps a bride for blessings. I imagined in this spot a most beauteous a queen who was really very hot. And from her soft skin exuded a most sweet lotus aroma. These are all literal descriptions that she exudes lotus smell. As if ripening or blossoming, she was bliss in her persona. So it's the metaphor of bliss you experience in meditation. Well, here we go. Bliss experienced in the body and sometimes within the mind of an arduous meditator with his vision on his sight. Then I travelled to the northern skies, and with a minister adorned it. He was wise and undeceitful, balancing Dharma and world politics. He's a symbol of meditation. He could manage all great nations as if someone with some special powers that with practice was perfection. So this is the capacity of staying in the world with Dharma in your mind, this minister. Now the skies were truly covered with these four tremendous objects. I multiplied them in the zillions, then I had my holy subject, which was made for you, O Geshe-la, for your practice and your teachings, for continuously building bridges, making sure the Dharma reaches the potential of our minds. So to you I offer wisdom, and then you do it here again, as a massive, tall white elephant, same in size as the Himalayas and yet gentle in his stare. And to you I offer effort, as an painted supreme horse, full with precious jewel trappings, trotting towards his special goal. And to you I offer a neutral mind, as the general of the emperor, full of power and of splendor, a compassionate motivator to treat all our friend and foe as a brother to adore. And so please now accept our offerings. May you live long and teach often. May you bless us with your knowledge and with your inspiring words. May you sense our gratitude for your efforts and your kindness, which has brought light to our blindness and some day will make us soar. So that's a manda offering with all the precious symbols. Like, yes, you're imagining a mountain of diamonds. Yes, you're imagining Zambu tree, but they are metaphorical of your capacity to grow that part of your meditative practice so you can practice.
That was great. That was great.
Thank you. So I figured instead of giving you all the details, if I do that, then you get the sense of both, and then I don't have to give you the details. So that was that. I want to talk a little bit about, I talked a little bit about that before. Why would Master Vasubandhu do this explanation? And I think there's three ways that you can describe it. First of all, some people say it's a literal explanation that Mount Meru is really Mount Everest, because the Buddha was in India and near Nepal, and there's Mount Everest. And to the south of Mount Everest is a land shaped like that, which you could call India. And then to the north is a land shaped like that, which you could call Russia. So some people like to say that, and that could be true. The other debate is what we talked about, that he doesn't really believe it. He's just losing a bet. And he's like, when I was silly, I believed these things, and it's metaphorical of all this other stuff. Yeah? But then I want to bring the Prasangika point of view, because if you read the very detailed description, forget the detailed descriptions of karma. If you look at the detailed descriptions of what happens in a mind at the subtle points of meditation, and how he slices that, and he explains it with such profundity. Profundity is a word. And then he talks about the moments before enlightenment as if he knows something viscerally, rather than making it up, then why would he then say you got a disc and you fall off the edge of the disc, you know, and that's where the world exists? What's it mean? Yeah, and I'd like you to consider, from your best understanding of karma and emptiness, how that's possible to perceive a universe like he's just described it. Is the universe the way we perceive it, like I showed you from the Western model? Is that really the universe?
Yes.
Really, really, truly, right? And it's always been that way. Is that the only way the universe can be experienced?
No.
Right. So then, based on karma and emptiness, if it was that way from its own side, would it ever change? Could it ever shift to anything else? And you have to consider that. You have to come to terms with, if something was self-existent, if something existed that way from there, projecting its essence out to the rest of us, it could never change, because its nature was to be that. If you know, the talk I give about the yelling boss, the thing that forced me to consider these ideas in a more practical way, when Gary used to come into the office and yell, "Hector, you're stupid," and I would get so frustrated and angry, and then, you know, his friend or someone else would look at that and go, "Haha, I knew Hector was stupid," and they'd feel some kind of joy coming out of exactly the same words. Was Gary a good person or a bad person at that moment, at that very moment? Was that Gary, the evil, horrible Gary that I saw, was that Gary the beautiful, perfect, understanding Gary that fired Hector or got rid of Hector or made Hector upset? At the same time, could a being from their own side be those two things, projecting those two qualities at once, at the very millisecond? And you've got to come to terms with your understanding of karma and emptiness that way. Because if one thing can, and however you imagine it, particular, like from an atom coming out of evilness or Gariness or goodness or neutralness coming out of that thing, if that was truly that way, every single thing engaging with it must perceive it the same way. And the fact that that doesn't happen, it's so simple we miss it. The fact that that doesn't happen means something else is going on and we're not sure about that something else. And in the not sureness, we get used to whatever we're told. So then you consider, where did it come from? Then you have to concede that the experience I'm having is particular to me, to my mind. And the experience his wife is having, the great nice Gary, even though that's not true, but imagine that were true, is particular to her. And the experience Gary's having about himself is particular to him. And the Gary I see is empty of being that, from over there. But because it's that, it's not that I can choose him to be nice or mean, and it's not that he can choose to perceive himself as nice or mean. I have that experience, means I've already had it, it's forced upon me. I can't choose it. But because it's projected, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, which is what our minds go to. Oh, therefore there's no Gary at all. And that's not true. It functions as a pain in the ass Gary. It functions as a boss or a person or a being who produces suffering in me. That's how it functions. This functions to kill you. It doesn't mean that it's only that way. When you understand the subtleties, when you get some evidence for yourself that there is no self-existent nature in that Gary, in this cup, in anything, that it is imputed upon it by our minds, and you need to meditate and study to get that, and repeat it. When you get that, just a taste of it, the world opens up. And if you can prove to yourself that that thing is not from its own side that way, that somehow I became an unwilling conspirator to experience that way, and I can't choose it right now, And I wish I could, but I can't. But it's also true that it's not only that way. So what's the answer? And then you have to go into karma. You have to say, well, what forced my mind to perceive that way? And do I always perceive in that way? And then you go into the whole science of your mind and what creates experiences in your mind. And then you wake the F up from this world a little bit and you go, I better figure it out. And if you've got Ting and Zin, you might sustain that for a couple of weeks and then you get distracted. You know, internet, sex, money, food, girlfriend, boyfriend, apartment, not apartment, my hair is getting long, I'm short, off, whatever, I don't have any hair. So let me just do the bridge, right? So if you get that as an experience for the Gary, for the cup, why is one thing good, one thing bad? The world of humans, collectively we share that experience. And we think it's true, and it's true for us, it operates that way. But there's proof, you can validate the proof that it's not that way from its own side. And you study and you practice and you do that. Once you figure that out, then it makes total sense that Master Vasubandhu could either be saying, you guys think that you know the universe? This is the universe. He could have a complete and utter valid experience of a universe in this way and describe it. Or describe it for beings of the time. Or describe it in a way that challenges all the views that were to come for the world. Then the description of the universe from this point of view is accessible and valid and doable. So.
I just had a question when you talk about like the choice, because I am very clear that I don't have a choice for so many things. It was something that I planted before. But at some point I did have,
yeah, nice.
I perceived myself to have a choice.
Yeah, yeah.
So it gets like really fuzzy for me.
Yeah, it gets meta. I know what you mean.
Yeah, and then how do you plant a seed to perceive yourself having a choice?
Yeah. I know. Well, this is where I fluctuate in my practice, okay? So you've got to test these ideas. You can't just believe it because someone said it, okay? But if you're practicing this idea and you're getting more and more evidence and you're meditating, you're trying. So first of all, I try and put on these clothes for 5 years, 6 years. A long bloody time. It's not like a whim, yeah? It's like, I had to make a decision. Am I going to follow the course of everybody else on the planet and drop dead from working my ass off and retiring at 65 and having 17 kids and building a house and blah, blah, blah. Am I going to just drop dead out of that same thing? Or am I going to try something different if I think there's a possibility of a different experience of being? So my choice was, I'm going to try something different. And even with that was difficult, yeah? So you try these clothes on, which means I got to try every part of this envelope on. Even the parts I'm weirded out by, you know, like, wait till I do the hell realms after the break, right? So you try all this on to try and put the mask that looks at the universe and the world and experience of being from that perspective, right? So then I put that on. And in that, once you decided you're going to do that, which means you're meditating, you're studying, you're keeping some kind of virtue or keeping some kind of log, then you get into that headspace that you're going to, right? Like, here is reality, and here's what I'm trying to look at reality with. And I then fluctuate. I jump there, and I jump here, and I jump there, and I jump there. And that's called practice. That's the practice. And the practice is specifically about the choice, right? I jump into my experience. My experience is, I have choice. I seem to have choice. I'm going to pick up the cup now. Watch. Right? But at some point, I'm going to will that, and I can't pick up the cup. So at that point, I didn't have choice. So it's heady, yeah? So it's still karma, experiencing itself. Like, I'm still experiencing myself as the capacity to exercise my choice in the short term. Can I choose to have this taste like chocolate? I want to. So there's limits to that reality that we're experiencing. And so I jump I go, okay, perceptually, I try and squeeze my understanding of what I've learned into my experience. And then let the experience be the bumping ground for whether or not what I learned, what I'm trying to practice is valid or not. And if it isn't, I follow Master Maitreya's point of view, which is put it on the shelf and come back to it later. And my shelf is really heavy. I've reinforced it a couple of times. Everything's dropped down. I've collapsed. I've put up the shelf again. That's called practice. You're practicing something. So yes, you have choice. No, you don't have choice. I mean, that's reality. The reality is, yes, Gary was a pain in the butt. No, he's not a pain in the butt. Yes, he is functionally. Yes, he could hurt me. No, he's not that way from his own side. No, he's not only that way. Yes, he's not. I mean, that's reality. And we want an answer that is solid and this way. And then we're happy, but that's bullshit. We won't be happy. We want the next answer, and then we want the next answer, and we want the next answer. So then at what point do you just go, okay, peel off whatever, because we've all come into this or any other experience with our prejudices. You know, we've got our, and you didn't get those prejudices. I showed Stephen today this bizarre video from Mexico, and they put a black doll and a white doll and these little kids, so that the camera's over there and you only see the back of a black doll sitting on a table and on a white doll, and these Mexican kids, they're not white, okay? And they're like, which doll is bad? The black one, right? Which doll is good? Like that. These kids are like 4. Which is a kind doll? Which is a bad doll? Which one do you like? Which one do you do? All of them. Yeah? Why? I don't know. Why? Because that one's mean. Why? Because that one's got beautiful eyes. Why? Because it was bizarre. These kids had no, they didn't recognize what they were doing. And then at the end they asked them, which one do you look like? And the kids are like, they've just said all these bad things about the black doll, right? And they're like, that one. Why? And then they're looking at the white doll and they're like, the ears are the same. It was horrible. We are like that. We are like that. We think we know the world. Someone told us the world. I like that one. And this thing, putting on this skin, is just trying the other doll on and saying, let me look at the world that way. And it's uncomfortable and it's disruptive, and any change is disruptive, it's antisocial. It's not, by its definition, it's not social. But what's your choice? I mean, we can do a normal life. Yeah, I know I can write the script of a normal life. We've seen it on Hollywood all the time. That's what we read. That's why the kids were able to do that. They've learned a script. We're doing that as humans. These teachings say there's more. And you have the capacity to see that more because you're not fixed. It's not this way only. You're empty of seeing yourself that way. You don't have to be just this way. If you can improve 5%, why can't you improve 5% on the 5%? Why can't you improve 5% on 5% on 5%? Infinite. Enlightened being. Nirvana. And then the true is the other way around as well. You can have a worse experience than the one you're living right now in New York. Nice clean clothes. And you can have a terrible experience. And it can happen like that. In the human realm and in all the other realms. With that, let's take a quick break and then come back and talk about hell. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I think that's it. Yeah, we'll talk hell. Yeah,